noticed, and I've been reading about, and I've heard people being affected by this, that there seems to be a general policy in social services. There was I really don't remember the guy's name, but there was someone who came out with this position that most accusations of paedophilia are the mother making it up, and it's false and everything. So now there seems to be a culture within the family courts. Whenever a mother says that their child has been abused or sexually abused, they immediately ignore the suspected paedophile and start investigating the mother for putting the
I know of a number of cases where mothers seem to have very strong evidence and it's being ignored. The difficulty with it is that some of these things do happen at times and sometimes they don't, if you see what I mean. So sometimes people do make things up. So, and this is why actually there's perhaps a good argument for use beyond reasonable doubt as an evidence base. Because you get into the situation where, because it's on balance of probabilities, somebody has to be wrong rather than nobody wrong. See what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we might be better to have a world where we're always not always looking for somebody to blame.
Yeah. But
actually just say, if there isn't really enough evidence, that this is this question of balancing probabilities versus beyond reasonable doubt. Because what is true is that sometimes people abuse children, and what is true is sometimes people make up allegations of it. Right? So both of those are true statements. You cannot conclude from either of those statements whether somebody has abused a child or not.
Yeah.
And all you know is it can happen.
I'm totally aware of that. I think you're right on that one. But
others have said there seems to be a tendency of ignoring abuse. That's true, but I don't know because that's a much harder, because what you're trying to do is second guess a process where you don't have all the details of the process. So it's actually very difficult to handle. But I am aware of cases where people have, all sorts of things have gone on, but without, I haven't, for instance, I've looked at some detail about the case documentation of Vicky Hayes' case. That's a case I know quite a bit about and knew quite a lot about before it sort of got a big fuss in about October last year. However, coming to any conclusion on any of these cases is not an easy thing to do. You have to get right into the case.
I have two more points that I'd like to discuss with you. One is we've run an online petition which has had now 857 or so signatures and well over 12,000 page views to stop the secrecy in family courts. Can that be useful to you at all, or could you make use of it?
I think, again, if we're going to attack secrecy in courts again, we need to do it in a bigger way, not just with a few hundred or 1,000 signatures.
So
the threshold that the Parliament gets fussed about is actually 100,000. That's the thing. But if you want to do that, you've actually got to do it with lots of people, not just a few people doing it, but there are lots of campaign groups working in this area, and they need to all do it together.
And it has to be a government e-petition, is it?
It also has to be a government e-petition because of verification. Yes.
Ah, I see.
All right. So if you want to have another go about the secrecy thing, it might be better to attack more the specific point, I don't know what your name is, the failure of the regulatory systems, right? And the Parliament needs to look at individual cases, because you could actually bring in a lot more people on that, because it is the regulatory systems in this country frequently fail. There needs to be less secrecy in judicial processes, and Parliament needs to look at individual cases to get things sorted out.
And less self-regulation.
Well, it's not necessarily. See, there was self-regulation in the past, and it seemed to work a lot better than the statutory regulation we have now.
The other thing is John, who's left now, who published the White Rose blog and the shocking death statistics that came out from FASIC in 2006 were actually based on research that you did in conjunction with the Daily Mail, and you said that you have more figures.
I get figures on child deaths which are suspected of abuse and neglect from Ofsted, and I get those figures quite regularly. There's higher figures than that.
Well, isn't that shocking enough to get? Is that the basis for getting that into the media? Is that worth doing at this point? For us as activists and campaigners?
The problem is if you do too many things at once, you don't achieve anything at all. So you've got to focus efforts, and that is something I'll come back to. At the moment, I'm working particularly on well, we come back to the point we were talking about, which is that the regulatory systems are not properly working, and there are too many cover-ups going on.
So you think that's what we should be focusing
Well, I think,
on?
yes, because if Parliament has to be willing to look at individual cases when the rest of the system is not working properly. And it's not.
Okay.
Although there are, let's be fair, there are things that happen properly. The HPC has done some good work recently. And it is not all going wrong, but there's enough going wrong to be important.
Yeah. Well, if we were the ideal support group for you, what would you tell us to do?
Well, what I wanted to start with was just getting the information about Robert Green's case together. And actually your vitamin D stuff I'd like to look at. And I'd like to look at the issue of the CPS shutting down that case.
This, I know you've got your own McKenzie friends, Justice for Families. I don't really have any sort of perception on how many and, you know, how that's
Well, it
working.
depends who is and who isn't Justice for Families, because you've got people like Alison Stevens, for instance, she's paying, she's not Justice for Families, but we work with her. So, you know, the fact that she does things, I've got Judy Haynes, Jerry Lonsdale, Florence Malone, you could say she's Justice for Families. You ever know Florence?
Yeah. But I get the impression that it's not enough to
Of course it's not
especially
enough,
as there is a growing need.
But the underlying problem is the system doesn't work properly, because it's no good having a really brilliant McKenzie friend if you're only allowed one expert opinion from somebody who says you're guilty.
Well, even as a lawyer, you know,
Yeah, even
the
the lawyer.
system doesn't
If you
work.
take Brendan Fleming are a good firm of lawyers, but they can't win when you're only allowed experts that say you're guilty.
Absolutely, yeah. But what I'm just saying is that they're reducing the number of lawyers now and the number of firms that have got the legally franchised to practice this kind of law, and I think that's going to ultimately
But
raise the need of
put that aside, because actually a lot of these things aren't really legally